What is up, guys, and welcome to Space Camp. My name is Andrew, and today I'm going to be giving you guys an introduction to small ships in Space Engineers. Today we'll be going over what small ships are actually used for, as well as some of the required components to build a small ship, and then I'll go on to build a small ship right in front of you so that you can see exactly how one is built and how you can build one on your own. Finally, we're going to take off, and I'm going to show you how to fly any small ship that you've built. I like to think of small ships as sort of the backbone to Space Engineers. Depending on how you configure the ship, it can do pretty much anything. You can make a ship to mine for you, to weld, to grind, to fight, or even just to transport you around. Now, admittedly, a lot of new players don't immediately think of small ships for such tasks as mining, grinding, and welding. I mean, you've got all these things in your inventory. Why would you need a small ship to help you do that? Well, there's a couple of bonuses to using small ships, as opposed to just doing it on your own. Small ships are usually more efficient, so where you can go and mine iron, a small ship will mine it 5 times faster, or depending on how you configure it. You can configure it whatever way you want. And it can also carry more, so when you're going out to mine your iron, you're often going to have to fly back to come and deposit some, then go out to mine your iron, back and forth over and over and over just to get a significant amount of iron in your inventory. But a small ship can usually carry way more, once again, depending on how you actually build the thing. You want to go out and fight space pirates with your little rifle? Well, what happens when you bring a rifle to a ship fight? You need a small ship with multiple guns to help you take that thing on. Small ships are incredibly useful. Let's talk about what it takes to actually build one. In order to fly, any basic ship in Space Engineers requires 4 main required components. That is a cockpit, some sort of power source, a gyroscope, and thrusters pointed in every direction. Let me show you these in more detail. So you require a cockpit. You've got 2 options, a normal cockpit and a fighter cockpit. You require some sort of power source. We've got our reactors, we've got a battery, and we've got a solar panel. We require a gyroscope, which allows the ship to turn, and we require thrusters pointed in every direction, and these are our 3 main types of thrusters. Let's go in depth a little bit more into the thrusters. So we've got our atmospheric thrusters, small variation and large variation, and the basic idea of atmospheric thrusters is that they work inside the atmosphere. So anywhere on the planet, these things are going to work, and there's a caveat there. I'll go over that in a second. Then we've got our ion thrusters. These are the opposite. They work outside the atmosphere. So anywhere in space, these are going to work. On the moon as well, these will work. Our ion thrusters are going to be key over there. And then finally, we've got our hydrogen thrusters, and these will essentially work anywhere. Whether you're in the atmosphere or in space, hydrogen thrusters got you covered. The only problem with them is they're a little bit more complicated to build, so we're not going to talk about them that much, but they're much more powerful than these 2 thrusters, and they're a bit more complicated as well. Eventually we'll go over a video talking about hydrogen thrusters and how to build a ship using those. But the little caveat that I said earlier about these working inside the atmosphere and these working outside the atmosphere is that it's not necessarily that black and white. Essentially, the farther you get from the center, or from the surface of the planet, the less efficient these get, and the farther you get from space and closer to the surface of the planet, the less efficient these get. So there's a middle point where these aren't very efficient and these aren't very efficient as well. And at that point, you need to use hydrogen thrusters. And you know, it's not actually that high. If we were building on top of that mountain right there, these might not be as efficient as these. So you really need to kind of go with stuff. But if you're new and you're building on the surface exactly, these are going to be your best bet. And if you're in space, these are going to be your best bet over here. So those 4 things are the required components to any ship. You've got your cockpit, your power source, your gyroscope, and then thrusters pointed in every direction. But let's talk about some optional things, because a ship's not very useful with just those things. You can have all these things and it'll just be a transport ship for you to carry you around, but you can do that with your jetpack. So what else can you do with a ship? Well, you can add a cargo container to store certain materials. You can have an antenna to broadcast your location. You can have a beacon to do the same thing. Antennas and beacons are very similar. We'll go over that later about what they're useful for. You can have a landing gears that you can attach to the surface of a place. You can have a camera so that you can see from a different angle or anything like that. You can have a connector so that you can actually connect and transfer materials from your ship to your base. You can have conveyors. Conveyors are used to connect everything. You got large and small variations of those. And then you can have a Gatling turret in case you encounter any space pirates. And of course, you can have armor blocks in various colors and all that sort of thing, just in case you want to make your ship look pretty cool. These are not required, though. These are all optional components of a ship, and there are many, many more. In fact, there are so many more that we're going to actually have a separate video for each type of specialized ship, where I'll show you how to make miners, grinders, welders, as well as fighter ships and everything like that. So now that we know what's required to build a ship and what's optional to build a ship, we're going to go and make our own very small, very simple transport ship so that you can see how you can make one on your own, how you can get flying, and especially so that I can show you what the controls are to fly. So we're going to be only using these required components. We're going to pick a couple from each section. So we're going to be using this right here, this cockpit. We're going to be using this power source, just a simple battery. We're going to be using this gyroscope. There's only one, so that's our option. Then we're going to be using small thrusters to make this ship. So let's go about doing that. So to build this small ship, the first thing that we're going to place down is going to be a small landing gear. So first we're going to have our large landing gear, tap it again. Now we have our small landing gear that we can place anywhere on this area. Now I know I didn't mention we'd be using a small landing gear, but we're just using this to sort of set it so that we're using small blocks instead of large blocks. Because then if I try to use this, we're using large blocks. But then if I try to place it on the landing gear, we're using small blocks. So this is a cool technique I've seen other players do as well, and I really like it. So what we're going to do is we're just going to build up a little bit using these blocks, and then we're going to go over just a little bit as well, and that's essentially going to give us a little base to start building on, and we're going to delete all this stuff after we're done building. So the first thing we're going to place down is going to be our cockpit. We're going to use our turn keys, which are, if you've forgotten at this point, insert, delete, home, end, page up, and page down. We turned that the wrong way. We're going to use our turn keys to turn this the right way, so that's facing kind of this way. That's going to be the front of our ship. Next, we're going to get our power source, and we're going to be using the battery. So let's turn this the right way as well. We're going to stick it right there. So we've got our battery connected to our cockpit. The next thing we're going to do is put our gyroscope down. So our gyroscope, let's put it on top, I think is a pretty good spot. So right up there. We only need one. Now the thing with gyroscopes is the more you have, the easier it is to turn. But for this, we're only going to need one. Essentially, the rule of thumb is if you find your ship hard to turn, just add another gyroscope. Otherwise, you don't need to add any more. Finally, this is the hardest part, is placing the thrusters. We need a thruster in every direction. And I'll actually, there's a caveat to that as well. We don't necessarily need one in every direction, but we could have one in every direction. So we're going to start with down. And the way thrusters work is you've got your atmospheric side. You see the top part, it looks like a fan. That's the intake. And then the bottom part, nope, I can't bring it towards me, I guess. The bottom part is more of an exhaust, so that's where the power is going to be coming out. So face that towards the bottom. We'll place one on this side, and we'll place one on this side as well. So that's got bottom covered. We're going to place some facing forward, so let's turn this way. One forward right there, one forward right here. We're going to have some facing backward. We're going to put these on the top. I think it's probably a good spot. So put one backward right there. We'll put one backward right here. And then finally, we want some left and right. So I think the best place to put that is we're going to have one left, and we're going to have one right as well. So this is every single direction. Actually, we forgot a direction. Let's go up and up. There we go. We've got thrusters in every single direction. So at this point, we've got our power source, our cockpit, our gyroscope, and our thrusters in every direction. And they're the correct thrusters as well, since we're in the atmosphere. Finally, it's time to destroy this. And since the ship is on, let's see if it flies. So we'll destroy these blocks right there. And there you go. The ship is now hovering, and we have a flyable ship. So here's the little caveat that I was going to say as well. Since we're on the planet, we don't necessarily need thrusters pointing up. It's not going to cause much of a problem because the gravity takes care of that for us. Another caveat is that we might need more thrusters pointing down than in any other direction because we have to deal with gravity as well. So if you find that 2 thrusters aren't enough pointing down, maybe you want to actually go with some more thrusters. So go to number 7, and we'll actually face these down as well so that we have 4 thrusters pointing down instead of 2. Now, once again, we saw that our ship was pretty stable with only 2, so I think we're going to be fine like that. But with 2, we should be good. Now, once again, if you find your thrusters not enough, you can use large ones, which are much more efficient as well. But we don't necessarily need that. So let's hop into our ship and I'll show you guys how to fly. So there are a couple of main controls associated with flying, and the first one that we're going to go over is getting into a cockpit. You press F to hop into your cockpit, and of course any of the other controls with the player that we did in the basic tutorials video, or the basic controls video, apply as well. So if we press V, we'll go into third person, hold Alt, we can turn around, and scroll out, we can zoom in and out. So that's really useful when you're flying, is to fly in third person, but if you want to be immersive and all that, fly in first person like this. The next control we're going to go over is the dampener. Dampeners do apply in ships just like they do apply in jetpack. If I press Z to turn off my dampeners, we're going to start falling out of the sky because the dampeners are making it so that we're flying in place. So if I press Z, there we go. We're falling out of the sky. So I've turned it back on so we don't crash. That's very important not to do. Do not crash your ships. That's a bad thing. Next, we're going to talk about how to turn your engine off. If you want everything in your ship to turn off, Y is the button that you want to press. So we'll press Y, everything's off. We start falling out of the sky. Press Y again, everything turns back on. And now we're floating again. That's very good. Another very important thing to note is that if you look in the bottom right of your screen, there's a little HUD bar. That shows you all of the information about your ship. It'll show you the weight of your ship. It'll also show you how much power you have left on your ship, as well as how much power you're using. It also shows hydrogen if you're using hydrogen thrusters, but that's not really important for us right now. So we'll see that currently we're using 14% of all of our power on the ship. That's that number 14 right there. And we have 20 minutes left of doing exactly what we're doing. So if we just stood here, in 28 minutes, our ship would fall out of the sky due to lack of power. Now, as we start to use more, those numbers will change. For instance, if we try to go up by holding space, we only have 15 minutes left because we're using 26% of our power. Now, if we press Z to turn off our dampeners, you'll see we have 2 years of power left. That's because we're using almost no power. The only power we'd be using in that case is to run the gyroscope up there. So that's how power is configured. Make sure you always have enough power, otherwise you're going to fall out of the sky. And I guess I may have forgotten to mention this, but the same controls as movement do apply for ships as well. If you press W, S, A, and D, you'll go forward, backward, left, and right respectively. If you press Q and E, you'll turn. Now, one thing to note with this as well is we did take off our thrusters that were pointing up. So you want to keep in mind that if we press V again, you'll see this horizon line sort of in front of us. That is level. That is the straight area. That is what you know. I call it the horizon line, but it's your level point. So it's how you know that you're straight in the air. If we tilt down, we're going to go under that. And if we tilt up, we're going to go above that. And that's very important to know, because if you go too far down, suddenly our ship is going to start falling out of the sky because we don't have any thrusters pointing up and we're pretty much upside down. So that's going to happen. Also, if we press Q and E, we might have some problems as well if our ship's not able to be kept up by those thrusters that we pointed left and right. So you got to keep in mind the horizon line, and you also got to keep in mind where your thrusters are pointing and how much thrust you might have in any one given direction. Well, that's going to be the end of the introduction to small ships. I showed you all of the stuff required to build a ship, and I've also built you a nice small ship that you can use in your game. It's very simple. It doesn't really do much. It pretty much just flies around, and that's it. So if you want to actually have any functionality, you might have to tweak it a little bit, but at least it gives you an idea of how to build a small ship just to get you flying around and get you used to small ships. And definitely it's okay to crash this one because it's very easy to build. But anyways, if you guys liked the video, please hit the like button, put your comments and suggestions down below, especially if I missed anything, because ships are very complex. So so definitely, if I missed something, post that down in the comments and I'll address that. We have a link to the Discord in the description. Please feel free to check that out, and I'll see you guys in the next episode of Space Camp.